The massive command ship Starbreaker hung in the darkness of space, its purple-tinted hull reflecting the distant starlight. Admiral Red stood at the main observation deck, his four arms crossed behind his back, as he watched the primitive human vessels approach. His species, the Bright Ones, had ruled this sector of space for over 10,000 years, and these newcomers were nothing more than insects to be crushed. "Admiral, the human fleet is maintaining their course," reported Captain Blue from his station. "Their weapons are active but not locked onto our vessels." Red's upper lip curled in what his species considered a smile. How brave of them, or perhaps just foolish. He turned to face the tactical display, where dozens of red dots represented the human ships. What are their weapons capabilities? Primitive chemical propellants, nuclear warheads, and basic energy weapons. "Sir, their shields are laughably weak compared to ours," Blue replied, his crystalline skin reflecting the soft light of the bridge. "They haven't even mastered gravity manipulation yet." "Fascinating," Red mused. "To think they made it this far with such basic technology." He raised one of his four hands, making a crushing motion. "Send them our demands for surrender. Give them 1 standard hour to comply." The message was sent, but the response came much faster than expected. The human ships began to move into an attack formation, their engines burning bright against the void. "They've rejected our terms, sir," Blue announced, surprise evident in his musical voice. They're actually going to fight." Red laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Then let's give them a proper education in modern warfare. All ships, battle formation Delta. Show these primitives the might of the Bright Ones." The battle that followed should have been quick and decisive. The Bright Ones ships, with their advanced quantum shields and plasma weapons, were technological marvels compared to the crude human vessels. But something unexpected happened. The humans fought with a ferocity that the Bright Ones had never encountered before. Their ships moved in chaotic patterns, defying standard combat logic. They used their planet's gravity wells in ways that made Red's tactical officers scratch their heads in confusion. "Sir, we've lost the Lightbringer," Blue shouted as one of their destroyer-class ships exploded. They overloaded their nuclear cores and rammed it. Red's four eyes widened in shock. "They're insane. No civilized species would sacrifice ships in such a manner." Yet he couldn't deny the effectiveness of the tactic. The explosion had taken out one of his best ships and damaged 2 others. The battle raged for hours. Though the Bright Ones were winning through sheer technological superiority, the cost was far higher than anyone had anticipated. The humans fought like cornered animals, using tactics that no proper military force would consider. As the last human ship in this sector retreated, trailing plasma and debris, Red stood in silence. They had won this first encounter, but something felt wrong. The tactical display showed their losses: 3 destroyers, 5 cruisers, and countless fighter craft, all to defeat what should have been an inferior force. "Send word to High Command," Red ordered, his voice grave. "Tell them we've engaged the humans. We are victorious. But—" He paused, looking at the debris field that had once been proud ships of both sides, advised them not to underestimate these creatures. "There's something different about them. Something we don't understand yet." As the message was sent, Red continued to watch the retreat path of the human ships. They had won today, yes, but the victory felt hollow. In all his years of service, he had never seen anyone fight like this. And somewhere, deep in his tactical mind, a small voice whispered that this was only the beginning. Little did Admiral Red know that this first contact would go down in history as the beginning of a war that would change everything his people thought they knew about combat, about honor, and about this strange species called humans. 3 months after the first contact battle, the war against humans was progressing exactly as the Bright One's high command had predicted. Almost. Admiral Red stood aboard his new flagship, the Star Crusher, watching as another human colony world burned beneath their bombardment. His 4 hands were clasped behind his back, but his knuckles had turned pale, a sign of hidden tension that his subordinates had learned to notice. "Another victory, sir," announced Captain Blue from his station. "That's the 5th human colony this week." He paused, checking his instruments. "Though we lost 2 more boarding parties. The humans, they keep fighting even after their shields fail." Red nodded slowly. Yes, they were winning. Their superior technology meant they could strike anywhere, destroy anything. But the cost in troops and ships was far higher than anyone had expected. For every human world they took, the Bright Ones paid in blood. "Show me the current strategic map," Red commanded. The holographic display flickered to life, showing their progress in glowing purple lines. Human territory was marked in red, shrinking day by day as the Bright Ones advanced. "Sir," called out Officer White from her communication station, "High Command sends congratulations on our victories. They're also sending reinforcements." The surprise in her voice was clear. Red's 4 eyes narrowed. Reinforcements meant High Command was worried, despite their public confidence. "What else do they say, officer?" White's crystalline skin flickered with nervous energy. "They're concerned about our casualty rates, sir. The humans, they've started using new tactics. When their ships are crippled, they're launching what they call boarding pods at our vessels. Small, fast objects that our targeting systems have trouble tracking." "Barbaric," muttered Captain Blue. "They actually send their troops to fight inside our ships, hand to hand. And they're good at it," Red replied grimly. "Those primitive projectile weapons they use. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons, not solid bullets. And in close quarters." He didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone on the bridge had heard the stories. The tactical display updated, showing another human fleet approaching one of their newly conquered worlds. Red studied their formation with all 4 eyes. The humans had learned quickly, adapting their tactics. They no longer fought in traditional formations. Their ships moved like swarms of insects, unpredictable and chaotic. "All ships, battle positions," Red ordered. "But keep our fighters close this time. I won't lose any more ships to their suicide runs." He had learned that lesson the hard way. The battle that followed was typical of their recent encounters. The Bright Ones' superior shields and weapons devastated the human fleet from a distance. But whenever they got close enough, the humans launched their boarding pods. 2 of Red's cruisers were crippled by internal fighting before they could be cleared. "Victory achieved, Admiral," Blue reported several hours later. "The human fleet is retreating." He hesitated before adding, "We lost 3 ships and over 500 troops in close combat." Red stared at the retreat path of the human ships. They were winning, yes. Their technology was superior in every way. But something about this war felt wrong. The humans weren't fighting like a civilization should. They didn't follow any of the standard rules of engagement. They adapted, changed tactics, and fought with a savagery that was both primitive and terrifyingly effective. "Send word to all ships," Red finally ordered. "No more close engagements. We keep our distance and use our superior range. Let them taste our plasma cannons before they can get close enough to board." But as he gave the order, Red couldn't shake the feeling that the humans would find a way around this too. They always did. And in the back of his mind, a worrying thought began to form. What would these creatures try next? The first warning came from a minor skirmish in the outer colonies. Admiral Red almost dismissed the report as a joke when it crossed his desk aboard the Star Crusher. "They brought what to battle?" he asked, all 4 eyes blinking in confusion. Captain Blue shifted uncomfortably at his station. "Swords, sir." The boarding party was carrying energy-enhanced swords. "We lost an entire cruiser to 30 humans wielding blades." Red's crystalline skin flickered with disbelief. "Show me the combat footage." The holographic display sprang to life, showing interior scenes from the lost cruiser. Red watched in stunned silence as black-armored human figures moved through the corridors with impossible speed. They carried what looked like ancient weapons, swords that glowed with a strange blue energy. "Magnify that weapon," Red ordered. The image zoomed in on one of the swords. It looked simple, a long metal blade with a handle, but it was surrounded by a field of crackling energy that seemed to cut through the Bright One's personal shields like they weren't even there. "Our shields," Red muttered. "They're calibrated to stop energy weapons and projectiles, not solid objects enhanced with some kind of field technology." "Sir," Officer White's voice cut through his thoughts. "Emergency transmission from the Golden Light. They're under attack." The tactical display shifted to show one of their newest battleships. It was already too late. The massive vessel's engines were dead, and Red could only watch as tiny human boarding craft attached themselves to its hull like parasites. "Get me a feed inside that ship," Red commanded. The images that appeared shocked everyone on the bridge. Humans in black armor were everywhere, their energy swords cutting through doors, walls, and the Bright One's finest troops with equal ease. Their movements were precise, practiced. This was no desperate last-minute tactic. They had trained for this. "How are they moving so fast?" Blue wondered aloud. "Their armor, it's interfacing with their nervous systems somehow." Red watched as a single human warrior cut through an entire security team. The sword moved like liquid light, bypassing shields that could stop plasma bolts. The humans' movements were a blur, enhanced by their armor, but guided by what seemed like years of training. "Send the alert to all ships," Red ordered. "Change shield configurations. Try to adapt to these new weapons." But even as he gave the order, he knew it wouldn't be enough. Their shield technology was fundamentally designed to stop energy weapons, not these hybrid blade weapons the humans had created. Within hours, reports began flooding in from across the front. The humans had launched a coordinated attack, targeting the Bright One's largest ships with these new sword-wielding warriors. Vessels that had survived countless battles were falling one by one. "Sir," White called out, her voice shaking. "High Command is demanding answers. How do we stop them?" Red stared at the tactical display, watching as more of their ships went dark. The humans had done the impossible. They had taken one of their greatest weaknesses, their reliance on primitive physical combat, and turned it into their greatest strength. "We can't match them in close combat," he finally said. "Their bodies are stronger than ours, their reflexes faster. And now they've found a way to bypass our greatest advantage, our shields. Surely there must be a way to counter this," Blue asked desperately. Red watched as another battleship went dark. "We spent thousands of years perfecting energy weapons and shields. The humans, they just went back to their most basic weapons and found a way to make them work against our technology." As the bridge crew watched in horror, Red realized that everything had changed. The easy victories were over. The humans hadn't just adapted. They had revolutionized warfare in a way that no one could have predicted. The real war was just beginning. 2 weeks after the humans revealed their sword technology, Admiral Red faced the grim task of reporting to the High Command. The massive holographic chamber aboard the Star Crusher filled with the translucent images of the Bright One's highest military leaders. "Explain this disaster," General Green demanded, his crystalline form pulsing with angry red lights. "How are we losing to primitives with swords?" Red stood straight, all 4 arms at his sides. "The humans have mastered something we never considered important. They're new warriors. They call them blade dancers. Combine ancient combat techniques with advanced technology." He activated a battle recording. The assembled leaders watched as a single human warrior cut through a squad of their best troops. The energy sword in the humans' hands moved faster than their targeting systems could track. "Look at their movements," Red continued. "Every strike is calculated. They've trained their entire lives in these combat forms. The energy field around their blades doesn't just let them bypass our shields. It enhances their cutting power exponentially. Surely our troops can adapt," another leader asked. "We have 4 arms. We should be superior in close combat." Captain Blue, standing behind Red, spoke up. "Sir, we've tried. But our species never developed these combat techniques. We went straight from primitive weapons to energy weapons. The humans, they kept practicing their ancient arts of war alongside their technological development. The recording shifted to show a larger battle. Dozens of blade dancers moved through a Bright One's battleship like water, their black armor making them look like living shadows. Their swords left trails of blue light as they cut through walls, doors, and soldiers with equal ease. Their neural interfaces are far more advanced than we thought, Red explained. The armor doesn't just protect them, it becomes part of them. Every movement is enhanced, every reaction accelerated. And the sword techniques they use, they'd been perfecting them for thousands of years. Impossible. Green exploded. They're barely a space-faring race. That's why we're losing, Red replied quietly. We thought space combat was all that mattered, but the humans never forgot how to fight up close. They kept training, kept practicing with physical weapons, even as they reached for the stars. The display showed more scenes from recent battles. Bright One ships, once considered invincible, were being systematically taken apart from the inside. The blade dancers moved in small teams, striking critical systems with surgical precision. They're retaking their colonies, Blue reported. Our ships can't stop their boarding parties. Once they get inside, he gestured at the scenes of destruction. What are our options? Green asked, his anger replaced by worry. Red switched off the battle footage. We've lost 30% of our fleet, not to space battles, but to these sword-wielding warriors. Our personal shields are useless against their blades. Our troops aren't trained for this kind of combat. And he paused, knowing his next words would shock the leadership. And they're teaching more warriors every day. Every human ship now carries at least one team of blade dancers. They've turned our technological advantage against us. Our complex shield systems, our reliance on energy weapons, these have become our weaknesses. The chamber fell silent. The assembled leaders watched as more reports came in from across the front. Everywhere, the story was the same. The mighty ships of the Bright Ones were falling to humans wielding glowing swords, their advanced technology rendered useless by this perfect blend of ancient combat arts and modern science. We need to rethink everything, Red concluded. The humans haven't just changed the rules of warfare. They've rewritten the entire book. And unless we find a way to counter these blade dancers, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the chamber knew what he meant. The age of easy victory was over. The real fight for survival had begun. In the largest training facility on the Bright One's homeworld, Admiral Red watched as their best warriors attempted to learn sword combat. It wasn't going well. Again, shouted Combat Instructor Gray, his 4 arms each holding an energy sword modeled after the human weapons. You must feel the blade as an extension of your body. The training squad of young warriors swung their swords awkwardly. Despite having 4 arms, their movements were stiff and unnatural. One warrior lost his grip, sending his sword flying across the room. This isn't working, Captain Blue muttered, standing beside Red. We've been at this for 3 weeks, and they can barely hold the weapons properly. Red nodded grimly. Show me the comparison footage. A holographic display activated, showing a captured recording of human blade dancers in combat. Their movements were fluid, graceful, almost like a dance. Each strike flowed perfectly into the next, their bodies and blades moving as one. Look at their footwork, Red pointed out. Everything starts from their stance. Their whole body is involved in each movement. Our warriors. He gestured at the training room, where another trainee had just fallen over trying to perform a basic strike. Sir, Officer White rushed into the observation room. The test results from the medical division have arrived. Red took the report, his 4 eyes scanning quickly over the data. His crystalline skin darkened, the equivalent of a frown. Just as I feared. Our physiology is working against us. Blue looked over his shoulder at the report. Our crystal-based bone structure makes us too rigid, Red finished. The humans have flexible spines, rotating joints. Their bodies can twist and turn in ways ours simply can't. We evolved for stability, not agility. In the training room, Gray was still trying to teach basic sword forms. The warriors were trying their best, but their movements remained choppy and mechanical. It's not just physical, White added, bringing up more data. The neural interface tests failed too. Our brains don't process physical combat the same way humans do. There, what did they call it? Muscle memory, Red supplied. Their bodies can learn and remember complex physical movements. We rely more on conscious thought and calculation. It makes us excellent shooters with energy weapons, but terrible sword fighters. Blue finished. A crash from the training room drew their attention. Two warriors had collided while attempting a simple practice drill. Their forearms had gotten tangled up in each other, and now they lay in a heap on the floor, energy swords deactivated for safety. 3 weeks of constant training, Red said quietly, and we can't even match what a human blade dancer learns in their first day. White's crystalline skin flickered with worry. The latest battle reports are getting worse. The humans have refined their tactics. Their blade dancers are now targeting our ship's crystal cores directly. They've learned exactly where to strike. Red watched as Gray tried to demonstrate another basic sword movement. The instructor's forearms moved independently, but without the smooth coordination that made human sword fighters so deadly. We've spent 10,000 years becoming the perfect energy weapon users, Red said. Our bodies, our minds, even our ships, everything evolved to support long-range combat with advanced technology. We never thought we'd need to fight up close again. And the humans? Blue asked. They never stopped practicing the old ways. Every movement their blade dancers make comes from ancient combat forms, perfected over thousands of years. We can't replicate that in a few weeks or months. The 3 officers watched in silence as another practice session ended in failure. The Bright Ones had always believed their forearms made them superior. Now, faced with an enemy who had mastered the art of close combat, they were learning a hard lesson about the difference between having an advantage and knowing how to use it. Send word to High Command, Red finally ordered. The sword combat adaptation program has failed. We need to find another way to fight these humans, or we're going to lose this war. The largest space battle of the war unfolded around the Bright One's main fleet base. 500 human ships faced off against 700 of the Bright One's finest vessels. Admiral Red stood on the bridge of the Star Crusher, knowing this could be their last stand. Enemy fleet approaching in attack formation, Captain Blue announced. But something's different. Their ships, they're moving slower than usual. Red studied the tactical display, his 4 eyes narrowing. The human fleet was indeed moving with unusual caution. Instead of their typical aggressive charge, they were advancing steadily, methodically. Scan those ships, he ordered. What's their troop complement? Officer White worked her console, then gasped. Sir, each ship is carrying at least 50 blade dancers. The larger vessels have hundreds. Red's crystalline skin paled. They're not here for a space battle. This is a mass boarding action. He grabbed the fleet-wide command channel. All ships, maintain distance. Do not let them get close. But it was too late. The human fleet suddenly accelerated, their engines burning bright against the void. From their ships erupted thousands of small, fast-moving pods, each carrying teams of blade dancers. Incoming boarding craft. Blue shouted. They're everywhere. The space around them filled with swarms of boarding pods, too many to shoot down. Red watched in horror as they attached themselves to ship after ship. The Bright One's energy weapons blazed, destroying many, but there were simply too many targets. Multiple hull breaches. White reported as the first pods struck the Star Crusher. Blade dancers have entered on decks 3, 5, and 7. The ship's internal cameras showed the nightmare unfolding. Hundreds of black-armored humans moved through the corridors, their energy swords cutting through everything in their path. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, each team moving with deadly purpose. They're heading for the crystal core, Red realized. All security teams, protect the engine room. But the security teams, armed with energy weapons, stood little chance. The blade dancers moved like living shadows, their swords leaving trails of blue light as they carved through defenses that had once been considered impenetrable. "Sir, the dawn breaker has gone dark," Blue reported. "The rising sun is under heavy attack." The Star Weaver, his voice trailed off as another capital ship went silent. Red watched the tactical display in growing despair. Ship after ship was going dark as the blade dancers breached their hulls and disabled their systems. The proud fleet of the Bright Ones was being taken apart from the inside. "Admiral," White called out urgently, "they've reached the main engine chamber." The internal cameras showed a sight that would haunt Red forever. 20 blade dancers moved in perfect synchronization, their swords cutting through the final defenses around the crystal core. Their black armor seemed to absorb the light, making them look like holes in reality itself. "All hands, abandon ship," Red ordered, his voice heavy. "Get to the escape pods." As the evacuation order sounded, Red remained on the bridge with Blue and White, watching their mighty fleet fall. The humans had turned their technological advantage against them. All their advanced shields, their powerful energy weapons, meant nothing against warriors who could strike directly at their hearts. "Look at them," Blue whispered, watching the blade dancers work. "Every movement planned, every strike calculated. This isn't just combat. It's an art form." Red nodded slowly. "We thought we were the masters of warfare, but while we focused on fighting from a distance, the humans perfected the art of the blade. They never forgot their ancient ways." The lights on the bridge flickered as the crystal core was finally breached. In the last moments before evacuation, Red had to admit a terrible truth. They had lost this war the moment they'd dismissed humans as primitive for still training with swords. 2 months after the devastating battle at the fleet base, Admiral Red stood in a place he never expected to be, a human martial arts training hall on Earth. The peace talks had been surprisingly quick, with the Bright Ones accepting most of the human terms. "Welcome to our oldest sword school," said Commander Stone, a tall human who led the feared blade dancers. "It has been teaching warriors for over 500 years." Red watched in fascination as human students practiced their forms. Their movements were beautiful in their simplicity, each strike flowing naturally into the next. Even without their advanced armor and energy blades, they moved with deadly grace. "I still don't understand," Captain Blue admitted, standing beside Red. "Why continue these ancient practices when you had advanced technology?" Stone smiled, picking up an old wooden practice sword. "Because the sword is more than a weapon. It teaches balance, discipline, focus. When we reached for the stars, we didn't abandon our roots. We built upon them." The demonstration area cleared, and a young student stepped forward. She moved through a complex series of movements, her practice sword whistling through the air. Red noticed how her whole body worked in harmony, each motion supported by careful footwork and perfect balance. "This form," Stone explained, "was created 1,000 years ago. When we developed our neural interface armor and energy blades, we simply adapted these ancient movements to the new technology." Officer White, who had joined them for the peace delegation, watched intently. "But how do you learn so quickly?" "Our warriors trained for weeks and could barely hold the swords properly." "Because we start young," Stone said, gesturing to a group of children practicing basic stances. "We learn to move this way before we learn to fight. It becomes natural, instinctive. The sword becomes an extension of the body." Red thought about his own species' evolution. "We developed energy weapons early in our history. Our bodies evolved to be stable firing platforms, our forearms perfect for operating complex machinery. And that made you incredibly effective at what you do," Stone acknowledged. "Your energy weapon accuracy is amazing, but it also meant you lost something we humans never gave up: the ability to fight up close." They watched as more students demonstrated different fighting styles. Each one was unique, drawing from different cultural traditions across Earth. Some were fast and aggressive, others calm and defensive, but all showed the same fundamental understanding of movement and balance. When we developed the Blade Dancer program, Stone continued, we didn't have to create a new fighting style. We just had to adapt what we already knew. The energy field technology, the neural interfaces, they enhanced abilities we've been practicing for thousands of years. A demonstration match began, 2 advanced students sparring with practice swords. Their movements were almost too fast to follow. Each attack met with a perfect defense, each counter-strike flowing like water. I understand now, Red said quietly. We thought we were superior because we had moved beyond physical combat. But you kept the old knowledge while embracing the new. You had both, while we only had one. Stone nodded. That's why we're offering to teach you. Not just sword fighting, but the principles behind it. Balance, movement, the connection between body and mind. It won't be easy. Your bodies are different from ours. But together, we might create something new. Red watched the sparring match conclude with a respectful bow between opponents. He thought about how his people had dismissed humans as primitive for keeping their ancient warrior traditions. Now those same traditions had changed the face of warfare forever. We accept your offer, Red said finally. Perhaps it's time for the Bright Ones to learn some new old ways. As they continued to watch the training, Red realized that the end of the war had brought something unexpected. Not just peace, but a chance for both species to grow stronger together. The humans had proved that the future didn't have to mean abandoning the past. Sometimes, the oldest ways were the best ways.